up by the bootstraps and making a living for yourself. Because I know that from my own experience, I was often told, why do you work? It would be much easier, and you'd probably earn more if you weren't working, you would just mainly invest credit. But
I think that's a really interesting point, and Andrew, I mean, this is a discussion that's been going on in the Tory party, well, in society in general, for decades. And universal credit was supposed to make this better, and it has in a sense that, because I think before it was like 90% of anything that you earn would be deducted from your wages. It's now 63%, or 63p in the pound, and that still seems to be incredibly unfair in me. So there is a disincentive to work more.
Well, you're quite right about the debate that's been going on, and of course the Treasury took back money from Universal Credit when Ian Duncan Smith set it up, and the £20 has put back some of the stuff that Ian wanted to see in it to make it better. But I think that Sam is absolutely right, and that she gave her own example, which I think is very false.
And the President thinks the economy still needs more stimulus to fully recover from the pandemic. And the other camp that thinks the government has done far too much stimulating already. I think I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to ask you nonetheless, which camp are you in?
So I was in the White House in March of 2020, and President Trump was going to put forth, in fact, did put forth the proposal for a tax holiday on Social Security. And I had to point out to the President, the issue wasn't people who were at work. The issue our country faced was people who could not work. The waitress, the hotel staff member, people in the travel industry who just, like literally, a light switch flicked and they were out of work. And we all know the stats of the stunning proportion of our population that has no savings. And it's not a pleasant place to be to disagree with President Trump, but I had to drive home the point. We needed to get checks in the hands of Americans as fast as we possibly could who have lost any ability to maintain, who have lost any ability to maintain their basic needs in life. Like this pandemic was going to wipe out millions, tens of millions of households that had no savings and no prospects of working for an unknown period of time. And I take my hat off to Washington for moving quickly on the first stimulus package. Well, we got those checks out the doors to American families, and we protected people's ability to have the basic needs of life.
It is what it is. Amazon down.
Now, this has grown over time to just a plethora of programs that have ultimately destroyed the incentive to work. You and I both know of the number of people today, or until recently, who are making more money on the pallet of government handouts than they were in their full-time employment. And that's crippled the supply chain in America. A real-life tangible example, I was at a restaurant in the northern suburbs of Chicago with one of my friends who's actually in the audience. And we'd ordered dinner, and the owner came out after an hour, a Hispanic man, incredibly, you could just feel the emotional angst. He's like, I am so sorry that you're having such an awful experience. We didn't even complain. But he just knew that the things weren't right. And he's like, this should be a great moment for my business. I can't hire people and I can't keep people. And just the anguish in his face was heartbreaking. And that's what so many small businesses are facing today in America. It's so hard to find people to come back to work, to do the jobs that we need to have done.
Yeah. Pop it up to 3% yield. That'll move the market because it'll push pension funds and mutual funds in here for the yield. But, I don't understand. It is what it is. Amazon down $85 a share to $31.97. In the last 3 months, these shares were at one time $37.19. Now they're at $31.97. Let's see, in the last year now, the high $37.73. So, we've given up $600, which is 15-18% drop. This is correction territory. Even though the stock is trading here, I'll get the word out. Even though the stock is trading here at $3,196, this stock is trading at 55.6 times earnings. Okay? I just told you, Goldman Sachs is trading at 6.8 times earnings. So Amazon is trading 9 times higher on an earnings basis than Goldman. Goldman is a bank. They don't have supply chain problems from China like Amazon does. They don't operate warehouses with employee issues. They don't have to worry about unionization. They don't have to worry about travel and delivery logistics. They make money with people's money. No shortage there. Lots going around. Goldman is so cheap. It just defies logic how some of these stocks trade like they do. Facebook having a terrible day, down $17.63. But could this be a bargain? Because the high of the stock has been $384 this year. It's trading at $325 right now. This is $60 off its high of the year. Trading at 24 times earnings, and I bet you the next time it's report coming out, this thing's, I bet you it's trading at 18 times earnings right now. This is cheap. May not be the fashionable stock of the day, it may not be the sexy stock of it, but it is a cheap high-tech flyer. $325 a share, the low of $322.70 today on 34 million shares. So yeah, this is a bargain here. The company now is worth $917 billion. They lost their $1 trillion handle. I do their $1 trillion value, the value of the stock. But they are buying their stock back. They do stock buyback. And they do not pay a dividend, but they earned $13.47 a share, and that was as of the last one. I bet you they're earning now over $15, $16 a share. This stock is cheap, but you know, hard to buy on down days. This one would be a call to buy a call for next year. You're gonna buy calls, next summer's calls? Yeah, I'd be buying it. Google down 62.94 to 26.66. It's recovered a bit today. It got down to 26.23. So stock's come back $40 odd a share. It's still down 63. So it's down $100. 52-week high on Google, 29.36. That was not quite $300 ago. So almost a 10% drop off. Trading at 28 times earnings, 28.9. This is they're not my employer, but they're my partner. Google owns YouTube. And you folks making donations to me make that money. So thank you, and they thank you too. Anyway, we try to do what we can. Target down 272, JP Morgan's up 40 cents. Costco down 8.54 today, down 2% today. Got down to 4.36, down $439. Trading 39 times earnings. Some of these stocks can give up ground comfortably. 39 times earnings, 56 times earnings. They can afford to lose a few, but they're a little rich. There are some of those. All right, well, let's get back to our favorites up here. Take a look at our stocks we follow the most. Rocket Lab. They're 14.68, got down to 14.36 around 2 o'clock here. So we're popping up about 32 cents or so from the low of the day. But we're still down at hefty 134. SoFi down 46 cents. GameStop down 4.98. Matterport down 94. ME down 69. SmartRent down only 4 cents, coming back on quickly. Spire down 1 penny right now, trying to come back to break even. ATIP down 15, and Sextera down 20. Dow down 357. We were under the 300 mark, got into that 290 mark, but we've given up about 55, 60 points in the last 15 minutes or so. It is what it is. When you have a bad day, you're gonna have a bad day. Now, it's not a blowout bloodbath. We have not had a single day in this downward trend in the last week or two that has really been out there. We were once down 980 points during the day, to last week, Monday, and then we recovered 300 plus points.
Last year has really come to almost a crisis standard with what's been happening. We're just not being able to access workers, which means business can't do business.
11 people at one time is a game changer for us to be able to provide the service that we want to provide at the level we want to provide, and most importantly, our existing employees who during this period have worked enormous amounts of hours.
These workers will stay in Australia for up to 3 years. An exciting adventure and a solution to a workers' issue, such as
the Chamber of Commerce of Northern Territory. According to country, the Australian Sporting says Dominic Perrottet will be leading the state out of COVID restrictions with a completely remade senior team for New South Wales. The Financial Review says the Morrison government is resisting Labor's retrospective investigation powers.
The Advertiser reports restrictions have ramped up for Mount Gambier and surrounds amid questions over where a COVID-positive woman picked up the virus.
The Mercury reports testing has been ramped up in Launceston. A COVID-positive teen left home, quarantined to visit a local supermarket.
The West Australian says the state government is poised to make COVID-19 vaccinations mandatory for fly-in, fly-out workers.
The Herald Sun says cafe owners on some popular food strips are facing high council fees to use parking spaces for outdoor dining.
Our website has more on the revelations of the Pandora Papers.
Courier Mail reports Queensland is poised to put science and innovation at the very centre of post-COVID economic recovery.
The Age says the minister in charge of next month's COP26 talks in Glasgow has challenged Australia to nearly double its 2030 emissions reduction target.
And The Guardian speaks with former ADF chief Chris Barry, who warns Australia's security could be at risk if defence forces are increasingly required to respond to climate-related disasters. Let's go to Sport. Michael Rennington, Brisbane. With all
Not getting the volume to tell me that female to 90% male, 10% female. Holding that number ever since. It's a very friendly channel, PG rated. Things are really good, and I'm really grateful to all of you.
Dankeschön, Hanno. Nur Leid, Unterdrückung und Diskriminierung nützen.
China! Solidarität mit Tibet! Solidarität mit Tibet!
Liebe Allianz, wenn Sie
Olympiade in China!
Weil in einem Land, wo Menschenrechte mit
A country which stamps on human rights and commits genocide must not be allowed to host Olympic Games. Big international companies such as Allianz and Siemens should not act as China's sponsor and support it. Otherwise, they imply Western democracies or companies from Western democratic countries support the Chinese government's acts.
Good news, the Hedgeye Investing Summit is back. We're super excited about this one, as always. The first week of October, I'll be hosting in-depth conversations with the smartest minds in investing. Some of my favorite people like Liz Anzani, Kyle Bass, and Grant Williams. We'll be discussing the big stuff, trends impacting markets and JVs. You don't want to miss this one. Demonstrations here or... is what you would have expected. The hardest thing to see is that, that actual change. I mean, you and I having this discussion, I think, is part of that change. But, what's sad and pathetic is that, like, when I see Kaplan, Rosengren, Florida, whatever, it's just like, yeah, to your point, it's not, maybe it isn't about these people, but it's what they, you would have expected them to be able to get away with. And I don't know if they're so upset. I mean, the thing that actually, as a person, I don't know the guy, and so I don't like hate on people, but Kaplan was a senior executive at Goldman Sachs, and he didn't even say I'm sorry about it. I mean, with my Canadian accent or not, there's no accountability at that level either. I think he said that he was distracted.
or that his trade and his actions could be a distraction, right? But see, that's part of it, right? I mean, that's why I often describe our leaders today, and I don't just include the as high-functioning sociopaths. And what I mean by that, when you go on the coast, so, I mean, they're the purely consciousness. The people who do this, they don't think they really need to. These are the rules as they see them, as they understand them, and so why would, and it is something that I think, again, is much more pervasive than, a few bad eggs. Right? It is a system that rewards sociopathy, frankly. It's a system that rewards the ability to compartmentalize so that you can tell yourself and believe what you're telling yourself that this is fine.
Yep.
That it is perfectly fine to, day trade E-minis at $1 million a pop when you're, a member of the FOMC. Or Eric Rosenberg and say, yeah, I'm going to day trade vote machines. I'm going to trade in and out of vote machines when my organization is determining almost exclusively, right, the performance of vote machines. So, it's the sort of thing, and I think this is what gets people, this is what frankly gets me. And what needs to be done now is that in the same way that they can say with a straight face and tell themselves that, oh no, this is perfectly above the law. In junior AOC, who traded her PA, her personal account, in the same way that Rosenberg or Kaplan traded their personal accounts, she'd be fired. Fired immediately. And from the industry, right? I mean, you can't have a black market industry name for workers, right? If you're some registered person and financial services, you're not going to, yeah, you never work again. And yet these guys, it's like, I'll retire for health reasons. Rosenberg. Kaplan was, I'm sorry I was a distraction. I'll go back to day trading, millions. And look, I'm all for people being rich. I really am. I'm a capitalist. I want to be rich. I want us all to be rich. Trade your freaking account after you're in government. not while you're there setting the policy. But look, it's true everywhere. It's true for not-for-profits. It's certainly true for, look at our current treasury secretary. She took $800,000 from Citadel alone. You should go back to Citadel and Finnick and Robin. She took $800,000 for 3 speeches. From Citadel between the time when she was Fed chair and she was president. Again, look, you want to cash in? Again, more power to you, right? Ben Bernanke is getting whatever millions he's getting a year from Citadel. Now, God bless, right? But you can't both be in government. You can't both be the regulator and taking money, vast sums of money, from the people who regulate it. It offends me, right? The mendacity behind it, and then to say, oh no, it's all fine, it's all good.
Right, it's like, it gets very dumb. That part, that last part, which you hit on multiple times, I think that's what really pisses people off. I mean, they sadly expect that, but when they see it, they're like, yeah, of course. But it's the guilty have no guilt. I mean, the CNBC didn't say one fucking word about this, like, for real. Like, I mean, Steve Leisman toes around like whatever with all these guys at the Fed and gals at the Fed and in government, and they don't say anything because they cut off their access to the only, I don't know if that's the only content they have. They feel like that is the most valuable, that they cannot, the journalist side of it, it's terrible. I mean, and it's not just CNBC, it's Bloomberg, it's, you know, they're not willing to hold these guys to account. Hey,
Michael, it's The Guardian. Are you worried about the donations that are going to the party at the moment? Are you worried about Mohammed Al-Masri's donations to the party? It's lovely to see you, Michael. It's very nice to see you. Prime Minister, are you taking dodgy money? Prime Minister, where are your donations coming from?
Yeah, the biggest topic right now, James, is inflation. And it's not whether it's transitory or not. Look, everybody's got their view around that. I think from what we're hearing from our companies is that costs are going up. Supply chain bottlenecks are still there. But the debate around inflation, like I say, it's not the transitory aspect. It's whether our companies can pass that through. Whether our companies are that weak link in the supply chain. And that's something we look at, debate, talk through constantly to make sure we're not that weak link. Because somebody's going to wear that margin pressure through this. And it's something that we're really laser focused on at the moment. And one thing though on the flip side of that is companies that are raising prices now, they've been staggered throughout the year. And what we're going to see next year, and I don't think too many people are talking about this just yet, is that they're going to get the full year annualized benefit from those price increases. If costs and commodity costs stay flat where they are today, you're going to get some abnormal products coming through next year in the margin side of things. And we're really coming through to stores and one of my largest positions. And they've been raising prices throughout the year and to totally offset the cost inflation. And they're saying that roughly half of that price increase will flow through to next year. And if commodity costs stay where they are, even at these elevated levels, they'll get margin growth on top of that. But imagine if those commodity costs come down. On the call, they said the bedding industry doesn't give those prices back at the end of the day. So they're exiting the year with double-digit price increase. Half of that flows through to next year. So you got mid-single-digit growth just from that alone, and you're going to get margin benefit from that as well. So the inflation side of things, James, transitory or not, that's not the big area of debate. The debate is, can our companies pass it through? We've been talking to a number of our companies in the last few weeks, and that's the high topic of conversation for us to understand how that works, how it fluxes through the P&L, can they pass it through? And that's the biggest thing that we're trying to look at right now.
Satellite picture. It's not just about what's happening in the southeast. WA has been putting up with the front moving through the southwest corner. In the southeast, those in troughs have been driving along with some wet and stormy weather, winds, damaging winds. In fact, warnings remain current in Victoria this morning, though we're expecting to ease from the west through the day, clearing the east this evening as the system is responsible moves offshore. We've got showers back up as well, and some calls easing to the southwest too. Up north, a bit of build-up really for parts of the territory. If you're in Queensland today though, it's looking mostly sunny across the state. Starting with a touch of fog though in the east, anywhere between about Cairns and Harvey Bay, you can see that. None for Brisbane though, 30 degrees there with a clear one ahead. It's fine across most of New South Wales as well until you look to the south. Some more showers, touch of snow over the Alps to 1200 metres. It's getting to 23 with a clear day in Sydney. Canberra, cloudy, but it should stay dry. 13 for the top of the good showers throughout Victoria and over the mountains in the south. Now we should see that clearing from the west through the day along with that wind. So Melbourne's just looking at a possible morning shower and the wind will back off in the afternoon. It's getting to 18. More wet weather across the country though. The southwest and the far south is where we'll see the best of those falls. Maybe an afternoon storm as well for the northeast. Hobart, you can expect a wet 17. Over in South Australia, the last of the showers just clearing out of the lower southeast first thing this morning. Otherwise, it's going to be a clear day. Adelaide, certainly, that's the case for you. It's getting to 19. Meanwhile, in the west, showers continue for the southwest of WA. Not too much away from the coast, though. Fairly light inland. Some morning storms around for the southeast as well. Perth, you'll see a few showers easing. It's getting to 18 degrees. And then up north, there's a chance of showers, maybe a storm as well. North of Tennant Creek in the Territory. A lot of heat in the north too. For Darwin, good news. A possible shower today. It's getting to 33.
Thanks, Nate. Still ahead on the program this morning.
It's the biggest way a company can pass through inflation is market presence. So if they have high market shares, they tend to have the ability to pass through prices. If they're very much an integral component of a supply chain by fairly low cost, they typically can pass through prices. We have looked at our portfolio and gone through every position on the back of that, James, and everyone that we've talked through right up to date, like I said, even through this morning, they're able to pass that through. But it really is about that market power at the end of the day, in terms of, you talk about the 45 forces and their bargaining power versus supplier base, their bargaining power over their customers. And it really comes down to how mission critical they are for their customers. And that typically will coincide with the market shares at the end of the day. And, thankfully, all the companies have that capability right now. That's the thing we look for. And one thing that kind of highlighted through the pandemic period was the essential nature of it. And that kind of underpins our power of pricing as well, James. So the majority of the companies in the world were being essential through that period. And I think that's showing up in their ability to pass prices through as well.
Seen those. And social media giant Facebook has suffered a major worldwide outage of its three most popular web services. Facebook, WhatsApp and Instagram are all down for millions of users across the globe.
Thanks, Michael. Well, for more on our top story, outgoing New South Wales Transport...
Certainly given the depth of the team and the fact that we have a good group of ministers in New South Wales who will now get their opportunity to lead the state out of pandemic, it should be okay. And I'd urge everybody to just give that new team a bit of a chance. 2.5 years. So
going taking condition for many sufferers and their carers, but in a special cafe in Noosa, it's offering a stigma-free social setting for people living with the syndrome, where a laugh and a cuppa are both changing lives.
Dick and Jean Addy have been happily married for 53 years. The last 5 years have been the most challenging after Jeannie was diagnosed with dementia.
I cried for days and days, and nobody could get me, and I couldn't remember anybody, and I couldn't do things.
Dick became a full-time carer for the 71-year-old.
The vast majority of us here that are with our partners are 24/7 carers, and it's not an easy job, but we wouldn't change it for anything.
The couple have found friendship and support at the Dementia Cafe, a support group in Noosa that encourages laughter and connection over a cuppa.
We just found out there's so much similarities in what's happening with them.
It's helped Jeannie's wicked sense of humour return.
And then I was really in trouble. So, yeah,
Well, you're never in trouble for swearing.
I'm sorry.
Noosa Care and a handful of volunteers run the cafe on a fortnightly basis to improve community engagement for those living with dementia.
They've got a safe environment to talk, to ask questions and feel like they're actually safe in asking those questions, because it's very overwhelming time in their life.
Dementia Australia says without a medical breakthrough, the number of people living with dementia is expected to increase to almost 1.1 million people by 2060. Supporters hope the cafe concept will spread across Queensland.
This has been the best since I've had dementia.
Take the leap of faith and believe in that it's a service that your community does need.
Amy Sheehan, ABC News, Noosa. New research from the Black Dog Institute has found the pandemic has fueled a decline in mental health among Australian workers. After almost 2 years of on and off lockdowns and working from home, reduced hours and job losses, 30% of young workers are reporting psychological distress, a figure that has more than doubled since 2017. Alex Fulton is a Melbourne mother, juggling 2 young kids and full-time work from home. She joins us now. Good morning to you. Welcome to News Breakfast. Hey, tell me a little bit about your situation. What's been your sort of